Parish President, remarks and reports. Parish President Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank the council for recognizing all them young people a little while ago. That was refreshing, it really was. We're going to be distributing Thanksgiving basket donations. The St. Charles Parish Department of Community Service is currently collecting donations at the new Sarpy office for the annual Thanksgiving basket program until November 21st. Visit our website to find out how to donate. We have a levy update. There we go. The latest levy update is now on the parish's website. Here's a short video of the now online Willow Ridge pump station, courtesy of Sea Level Construction. Is it long? As you can see, it's a magnificent structure. And my staff, when we first came in, we got to climb all around it, in the bottom, in the sumps and all. It is a big pump station. It's the first big one the parish has taken on in quite some time. First of a couple to come. At this time, I want to turn it over to our lobbyist, Mr. Tom Tozan. He's in town. He's going to give us a report and field questions from the council. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Parish President Cochran. Good evening, Chairman Wilson, distinguished members of the council, the public, everyone tuning in as well. Again, as Parish President mentioned, the purpose here is to give you a bit of an update on our activities. We, since July, mostly around flood control. It's obviously our main concern, our main priority in representing you all. And some of what I'm going to say is a lot of comes from meetings in September when some representatives from the council, or excuse me, from the parish came up when the chamber was supposed to be there, but also a good number of meetings with and without, I should say, representatives from the council. But mainly, I'm going to speak a lot about meetings with the Corps and our delegation, that being the United States House representative members and senators in D.C. And again, now specifically in flood control, we're talking about West Shore Hurricane Risk Reduction Project and the Upper Barataria Basin Risk Reduction Project. In our meetings with the Corps, and we had the pleasure of sitting down with the Deputy Chief of the Mississippi River Valley Division at HQ, and separately with the New Orleans Deputy District Engineer for Project Management while he was on assignment, and still is, in D.C. with the Council on Economic Quality. The Corps stressed the need for coordinated stakeholder advocacy, which was interesting. I mean, we're talking about from the state, from the parish, and beyond. To be specific, at the Corps, what we heard was we're not hearing enough about specific projects from all of the stakeholders together as one unified message, was essentially what we heard. And so, you know, our aim right now is to bring together the stakeholder community. We're doing so again, in two separate efforts on UBBRR, if I may use the acronym, and West Shore. It's a little slower going, I should say, on West Shore. As you all know, there's been some transition, which I'm sure you guys are pretty happy with, the new executive director there. but he's got his own work to do to bring all of his stakeholders together, and we are being as supportive as we can. But that is the ultimate goal is to now approach any and all of these organizations as one unified body, speaking from one hymnal. The Louisiana delegation continues to be incredibly supportive. It's all about priority, quite frankly, and we've been pretty good at identifying our champions. We know who they are. We stay in close contact, constant contact with their staff, with those members, and are driving this agenda as best we can. I don't need to tell you all about the environment in D.C., certainly what you read in the headlines. However, there is a very large undercurrent going on that we do continue to communicate with you all through these reports. It's essential that we stay in contact with not only the members of Congress, those committees of jurisdiction, all of that staff in the minority, the majority, and ask for their support in weighing into some of the more critical agencies to your efforts, that being the Corps. Let's use them as a very clear example. And that's, for the most part, what we have consistently asked of them. Because, again, I think that the delegation is in pretty solid support of what you all are trying to accomplish. Specifically to UBRR, our goal is to expedite the Corps' process. So there's 3 ways we can do that, and this became very clear sitting down with the deputy director, the New Orleans deputy director, engineer and project manager. We have the traditional approach, which is to try to achieve a chief's report. This is authorizing in WRDA, followed by inclusion in the president's budget, and finally appropriation of dollars. This is the long path, and we've certainly already been on it. That's not to suggest that this is a new start of any kind. Sorry to use that term. I'll use that again in a bit. But it's clearly a difficult road in any environment, and we continue to do just that. But the point I'm trying to make is we have needled in to find a couple other options. And one of those options is a New Start study, which must be partially funded by the Corps. This is critical in understanding the next alternative. But the point is the Corps and/or OMB have got to push this project, the New Start study, to be included in the president's budget. And they both use very different models in order to achieve what they call BCA, benefit cost ratio, and benefit cost analysis. That's something we're working through subcommittee staff to be in contact with a lot of the new folks that are and aren't seated at OMB, and certainly working with folks at the Corps, again, some that are and aren't seated. The Assistant Secretary, for instance, of Civil Works has not actually been seated yet. So that we believe is possibly our main objective, is to try and achieve dollars for New Start study on UBRR. The next alternative option is to fund this study with outside dollars. No federal dollars, but in conjunction with the Corps, so that at the conclusion, the study would be seen as equivalent to a chief's report, thus eligible for federal construction dollars. This is possible, but we're not exactly sure what type of criteria is necessary. Thus, we are meeting with the Corps tomorrow morning to discuss this as a viable option, if it is, and if not, we simply put all of we train all of our guns on the New Start study option led by the Corps. So as I mentioned, we have scheduled a meeting with, unfortunately, Commander Clancy is out of town this week, but we will be meeting with a senior project manager to discuss these options tomorrow. Not tomorrow, on Wednesday. We also will schedule a meeting with the new ASACW, that's the Assistant Secretary of Civil Works, as soon as that person is seated, to also talk about these options and really understand better what a parish-led study might entail. Obviously, continue to work with the delegation, mainly Graves, Scalise, and Kennedy, to discuss the Office of Management and Budget strategy. Again, that gets back to the more traditional options ahead. It has to be led through those offices and through the subcommittee. We feel it's really the only track. We also have encountered some engineering, call them hurdles, the pipeline issues I'm sure you all are aware of. We are in discussion with mentioning Graves, Scalise, and Kennedy, we're in discussion with them to see if we can't work with those offices to rally a lot of all of those entities that are involved to see if we can't come to some kind of joint engineering plan. Right now, it looks like everybody's going to want to do their own thing. This is very new, so it's not exactly, we don't exactly know where they stand, but do know that additional costs will incur if each entity requires the process to be done their own way. So we're trying our best to rally everyone to have those discussions ahead of time. There is some precedent for what you all are trying to accomplish with the existence of these pipelines. This has been done just southwest of here, so the Corps is very familiar with some ways in which we can address this. The challenges are obviously getting certification for that levee should we do one or some other thing with those areas. So that's why these discussions are very important, and we're doing our best to educate the members of Congress and senators for the need to rally and bring all of those folks together to have those discussions to reduce the possible liabilities to the parishes involved. To West Shore, I spoke a little bit about the PLD and its transition. I think it really boils down to that one comment I made before. Right now, we are simply working with the new Executive Director, Bosco, to lend any kind of support we can to bring all of those stakeholders together. We feel that has been lacking, not to cast aspersions of any kind, but that's something that we want to see. And again, this is not our analysis. This is what we're hearing from some of the people that need to hear from you, not only you as one stakeholder, but everyone around these projects. And so that's the work right now. To be specific, we're talking about neighboring parishes, engineering firms, CPRA, and all of the local elected officials. We're reaching out to try to get everyone together on the same page, pushing one agenda. Key near-term efforts are to keep alignment among these stakeholders, build momentum on the project, and increase profile with the Corps and federal officials, all in an effort to create broad support during the project's construction phase. Long-term goal is inclusion in the President's budget so that construction can begin. HISTRIS, I'm sure, Hurricane and Storm Damage Risk Reduction System. I'm sure you guys don't even want to talk about this, but unfortunately that's now on our list of to-dos. The state and CPRA have found themselves in a hole and have asked everyone to support those efforts. We're happy to. We've spoken with CPRA and the governor's office about this a number of times. We are trying to coordinate our message with theirs to better understand what kind of waivers they're looking for, what is possible, because it certainly seems like a very tall order what they're asking for. So we're trying to be as supportive as we can and work with them and others to find ways in which the state, the CPRA, therefore the state, can find some relief. We're doing our best. On to national NFIP, excuse me. So National Flood Insurance, the goal obviously is a reauthorization that avoids sharp increases in premiums. The original House Finance Committee bill contained several provisions that would negatively impact the Parish Southeast Louisiana region. These include stripping grandfather status from any property that files a second flood insurance claim, sanctioning communities that do not have mitigation plans up to FEMA standards, and phasing out coverage for new construction in special flood hazard areas. However, over time, the bill has improved due in large part to our delegation, specifically Majority Whip Scalise. He has recently made a deal with Finance Committee Chair Henserling where grandfathering would be protected when communities adopt new maps, although rates would still increase if the property owner has to file multiple future claims. Additionally, prohibitions on new coverage in SFHAs have been removed. Toes and Consultants will provide updates on the reauthorization package as it moves forward. This is an incredibly fluid process. Don't know how much you guys are, I'm sure all of you are following it, but the undertones in DC are loud. We certainly have to see how tax reform looks, but I do think that we can look to this recent deal and understand that the Louisiana delegation simply will put their foot down on a good number of provisions on this issue. That's what we hear in our meetings with them, and I certainly trust Senators Cassidy, Kennedy, Scalise, a good number of them. I mean, they understand what is happening and have been some of your best advocates. Certainly, I'm sure you've read all about it. But the point is, they're fighting for everybody's, on behalf of not just your parish, all those in the Southeast. You've got Florida, Alabama. A lot of folks are now coming together to make sure that the U.S. government understands these very dramatic concerns. And all the year, we have been working with other members of the House and Senate. I keep going back to our delegation, but the reality is you've got to be working with each of the different committees of jurisdiction. And so we've done a good bit of work along those lines, met with Subcommittee Chairman Duffy and others to highlight your parish's concerns. It's not the easiest slog in the world talking from somebody who's just not from your part of the world, but there are enough, I think, in America that do in fact flood. So this is there's a loud cacophony. So Toes and Consultants and parish officials met with Louisiana delegation during the DC fly-in in September. We had significant interaction with Congressman Graves and Majority Whip Scalise's staffers on this issue. They're all, well, we've also met with Senator Kennedy's office and coordinated meetings for your assessor who is in town to discuss a lot of those issues. So it was a pretty good coordinated effort to go through a lot of not only our delegation, but a good number of the officials there leaning in on this issue. And we continue to work with GNO, participating on all of their calls, lending any kind of strategic thoughts as we can into the process, and then as we go out, speaking from their hymnal, if you will, to really preach. They've taken a great lead here, and so it's theirs is a great message to carry forward. That takes us to GOMESA. So the Gulf of Mexico Energy Security Act. We've reached out to Majority Whip Scalise and Senator Kennedy's staffers to stress the importance of GOMESA funds and to advocate against proposed reductions to Louisiana's share. working with the delegation over the next few weeks to assist in advocacy efforts to the Department of Interior and OMB. It's going to take that kind of Herculean effort, quite frankly. Again, this is one of those where every single one across the board, your Louisiana representatives stand in unison. It goes beyond, but we have our own specific issues on Go Mesa, so we're certainly banded together on this and committed to pushing for all of the dollars in which we have been promised. That's it. Open it up. I'm happy to take any questions, you guys.
Any questions under the item, Parish President, remarks and reports? Well, we still under, I'm waiting for, no, any questions for Mr., okay, Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said the Corps is looking for coordinated stakeholder advocacy with regards to these projects, upper barrier risk reduction. Y'all, that's coordination between y'all, CPRA, and all the surrounding parishes. That'll be
every levy district. They want to hear beyond even councilmen. I think they want to hear industry. They want to hear everyone we can bring together that is affected currently, that would be affected then.
Yeah, because you know, all the chemical plants that we have up and down the river right here that would be behind that protection, those are some of the major players, you know, when that stuff gets shut down. So what efforts are being made? How are you coordinating and trying to get them together as a team that y'all speak as one loud voice?
Absolutely. It's sensitive, as you know. If you're a big commercial or industrial player, the last thing you maybe want to do is talk about how vulnerable you are. But this is it's an effort to bring everyone together to talk about the benefits, and that's the difficulty is really understanding benefit. The costs are the costs, but the benefits where someone would have to admit they're vulnerable in order to really factor in a potential benefit, and so.
Yeah. But even with that, you know, it's not so much the plant getting flooded. If all the people that live in the parish get flooded and all their employees are out of homes, that's where the plants can't operate. The plant may be functional, but they don't have the people around anymore to keep the plants running.
That's absolutely right.
Stuff
And
like that.
yeah, so here we get into, again, that how do you calculate, right? And we've had some pretty difficult meetings with the Corps about calculating that benefit. They love to calculate the loss of cars. I mean, things that are very tangible and easy for them to put a pencil to, those they'd like to talk to you about. Some of the other things that are very, very hard to put a value on, they almost avoid. And so I agree, these are things that need to be considered. It's not as simple as you and I agreeing, unfortunately.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Cluley?
Thank you, Chairman. The Go Mesa funds that are due Louisiana, about how much money are you talking about on an annual basis? Or is there a dollar amount already being mentioned?
Good. I think right now they're talking percentages. I'd have to look at the total dollars, but the debate is on percentages, and it's from my understanding, this is
like royalty funds?
Correct. And so, I mean, to give you a dollar figure, I'd have to understand exactly what was produced at any given time. So it's really all about the rates.
Right. But for the most part, most of it right now goes back to the federal government, or all goes to the federal government, and then it would be returning back to the state at some point. Is that right?
So, I do believe that, I mean, you're asking a pretty technical who receives what when, and I'll have to get back to you on
Okay.
on
All
how
right.
the
I just
flow
thought there
of
might have
dollars
been like
happens,
a range of dollars that might be at risk.
all of it.
Right.
Ms. Fisher-Perrier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming tonight, Mr. Tozan. In relation to NFIP, the House flood bill will be voted on at some point this week, from my understanding. It looks more favorable, as you said, based on some of the changes and concessions that they made in committee and some compromise with Henserling.
Right.
So it'll enter the Senate after the House approves, and it looks like it's probably going to pass in the current state that it's in. But that would also leave room for some concessions that could be favorable or could be negative on our end as it goes through the Senate side. So
Correct.
I know that you guys have a close eye on it. I just hope that you'll continue, because the current state that the bill is in, I think, would be okay.
Correct.
And I know we're fastly approaching December 8th, which is the renewal,
Yeah,
well,
and-
expiration of the program.
And there have been some interesting comments. I'll talk to you offline about all of that, but there are some administration individuals that are certainly not very happy with its current state, because it just simply isn't fiscally conservative enough. So there's a danger, quite frankly, still, even though you have what was clearly some good negotiations, the result of, or rather good result from negotiations.
Sure.
We need to still be wary.
Sure. Throw that political weight around. We know what the bill should look like, but unfortunately, politics plays a big part in it, so.
We've all done good work in making sure that our officials understand the local needs.
Yeah.
And so it's really, I hate to say it's in their hands at this stage. There's always things you can do, but on this issue, like a great many in Louisiana, I do feel like we are in as good a hand as we can be, given the position of our elected officials.
Agree. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, you done? Thank you. Have concluded the report.
Thank you very much.